I promised you a 5-part, deep dive into Cinque Terre. So, here we are. This is episode 1 and today, we explore Monterosso Al Mare. Here's the thing. Most people do Cinque Terre by train. However, our adventure will be disrupted by a train strike. So, we got creative and we drove in. Hence, that means I'll be showing you these towns in a slightly different way than most guidebooks or Instagram reels. Starting here in Monterosso, the only one where you can actually park, without crying. Now if you've ever seen a postcard from Italy with rainbow-colored houses clinging to cliffs, crashing waves, and someone eating gelato while wearing linen, this is probably where it was taken. But what's Cinque Terre really like when you're not just rushing in for a selfie? What's behind those alleyways? And how do you get around when the trains go on strike? And is Monterosso worth starting your journey with? Well, let's find out. You know how everyone says, don't drive in Cinque Terre? And yes, they're not wrong. But Monterosso is the one village where you can almost get away with it. The parking lot is right by the sea, and if you want to make the most out of Cinque Terre, do not try to rush the 5 towns within one day. Our plan was simple: find a parking lot at Monterosso and then use the train to move across the towns. We got out and started walking, and the beach stretched out beside us, pebbled, a little wild, definitely not your resort-style towel and cocktail scene. The sea was angry, with waves slamming into the breakwater like it was personal. The sky was moody, but it wasn't raining. We walked past the train station almost immediately, and people were pouring out of it like ants from a kicked anthill, backpacks, selfie sticks, and all. We gave ourselves 3 days to explore the 5 towns, and for the first leg, the plan was to explore just Monterosso, as it is the biggest of the 5 towns. But here's the thing though, we noticed, as we walked past the train station, that all train service along the 5 towns will be suspended tomorrow, due to a train strike. Change of plans, we will explore 2 towns today, but we will only feature Vernazza, the 2nd town, in our next video. So if you do not want to miss it, make sure you subscribe and hit that notification bell, so that you are alerted once we release it. We kept walking along the beach with the sea on the right, a string of little cafes, souvenir shops, and sun-faded hotels on the left. The town was already awake, buzzing with tourists and that very specific smell of sunscreen and espresso. Now let's talk about Scoglio di Monterosso, this massive rock just casually sitting out in the sea like it's waiting for someone to cast it in an ancient legend. Some say it's just a chunk of cliff that fell off, while others think it was placed there for protection from rough seas. Instead of going through the tunnel right in front of us, we took the scenic path. It hugs the coast with crumbling stone walls on one side and further ahead, absolutely no railings on the other. Just you, gravity, and some very dramatic waves below. The weather was doing that typical Ligurian drama, cloudy one minute, glowing the next. But when the sun did come out, oh my God. It was like someone turned up the saturation in real life. And the water turned that perfect Mediterranean blue, and every building suddenly looked like it had been freshly painted. Every time I stopped, I pretended I was taking a photo, but I was really just catching my breath. Luckily, the views got better. We could see the whole curve of the beach, tiny humans scattered like dots, and Monterosso pastel buildings climbing up the hills like they're trying to escape the sea. Alright, before we continue ahead, let's get our bearings for a second. Where exactly are we? We're in Cinque Terre, which literally means 5 lands. It's a stretch of rugged Ligurian coastline in northern Italy, made up of 5 fishing villages: Monterosso, Vernazza, Corniglia, Marnarola, and Rio Maggiore. All 5 are stacked between cliffs and the sea, connected by hiking trails, trains, and the occasional mule path if you're feeling old school. Now here's what most people don't realize. Monterosso is actually the biggest of the 5. And it's also the flattest, which is a blessing if you've had enough of stairs pretending to be roads. This is the statue of Saint Francis of Assisi, and we reached the lookout via the upward sloping path, thereby avoiding the direct climb, the 300 over steps. Here though, it's not just a statue. He's perched right on the cliff edge, facing the sea, like he's holding the whole coastline in a prayer. To reach Monterosso, you've got a few options. Firstly, there is the train, from La Spezia or Levanto, and it is generally super convenient, unless there's a strike. By car is slightly tricky, but doable in Monterosso, if you can find a parking space. Lastly, by boat, and yes, there are ferries. And we did not use the ferry, as we boarded it to visit Portofino, and for this video, we wanted to travel by road. In the background is Vernazza, and we will be exploring this village in the next video. Now let me give you a sense of scale. Monterosso Al Mare, for all its fame, is tiny. We're talking about less than 10 square kilometers total, and that includes the surrounding hills and vineyards. The actual village, which we will visit in a while, is the size of a neighborhood. But first, let us walk these last few steps that lead to the convent of the Capuchin friars. The climb to the convent of the Capuchin friars is quite gentle. And the silence up there was unreal. There was no crowds, no noise, and it was just stones, trees, and that kind of stillness you don't get at sea level. We finally reached the convent, tucked into the hill like it was trying not to be noticed. And no grand facade, no drama, but just peace. Which, honestly, makes sense as the Capuchin friars are known for simplicity. And the doors? Locked. Of course. My husband pushed ahead, and that meant more climbing, but I was tired. Earlier, he told me that Monterosso was the flattest among the 5 towns. But it seems that we had climbed to the top of a mountain already. So I pulled him by the ears, and we started to head back down, in the direction of the main village. And just like that, we were back at sea level, stepping straight into Monterosso Old Town, through a narrow alley that felt like a secret passage. Around 1,400 people live here full-time, give or take. But during the high season, that number explodes, with cruise ships, day trippers, influencers, and hikers all flooding in. As we approached one of the entrances to the village, it smelled like dinner. And quite frankly, a little like heaven. On both sides for the walkway there were restaurant menus, scribbled in chalk, ivy crawling up the walls, and that unmistakable mix of garlic, seafood, and local wine. And immediately something struck me, and here's what I love about this part of Monterosso. It is compact, but layered. And the buildings are stacked like they're holding each other up. This is the Oratorio dei Neri, officially known as Oratorio Mortis e Toraciones, which loosely translates to Brotherhood of Death and Prayer. Built back in the 17th century, this tiny chapel was home to a group known as the Brotherhood of the Black Robes. Now just a few steps away, you literally blink and miss it, is a completely different world. This is the parish of St. John the Baptist. It's rather bold, and feels Gothic, and is absolutely stunning. Built around 1307, this is the main parish church of Monterosso, and while the outside looks like it was designed by a medieval fashion blogger, with black and white stripes, rosette window, pointed arches, the inside is surprisingly understated. If you're wondering whether you can live here full-time, the answer is yes, but it'll cost you. Property prices hover around €6,000 to €8,000 per square meter, depending on how close you are to the water. To rent a small one-bedroom apartment in Monterosso, you are looking at around €900 to €1,500 a month, again depending how close you want to be to the beach. Total monthly cost of living for a couple? Realistically, about €2,500 to €3,500 a month if you want to live decently, like cook at home sometimes, enjoy a few nights out, buy fresh anchovies without flinching, and not feel like you're on a monk's budget. We just kept walking. You know when you're tired, but also not done yet? The sun was dropping, the town was starting to slow down, and we were just wandering. People have been living in Monterosso for over 1,000 years and maybe more. Back then, the village was actually up in the hills, because pirates were a thing. You didn't want your front door facing the sea unless you liked surprises involving swords and screaming. So, the villagers stayed hidden, tucked away in the trees. Eventually, they moved down closer to the coast, probably realized fishing was easier when you didn't have to hike 2 hours just to reach your boat. That's how Monterosso slowly became what it is today. And you can still feel it. That weight of time in the walls, the uneven stones under your feet, the corners where sunlight barely reaches. It's like walking through a story that never really ended. Would I live here? I mean, I wouldn't hate waking up to this view. But I would need at least $3,000 a month to live decently and not just survive on bread and cheap wine. And finding a rental? Well, that's a whole other story. Maybe my husband will agree to live here for a few months, but wait. This is just the first of the 5 villages we visited, and let's not jump the gun. First, we will visit the other villages and then we will decide where to settle down, and I hope that you also can let us know your preference in the comments section. Oh, one important thing if you are a foodie. Monterosso is anchovy territory, and anchovies here are famous, protected by a DOP status, which basically means Italy's version of this is legit. Try them marinated in lemon, or packed in oil with a glass of white wine and thank me later. Okay, since we're here, walking through these tiny alleys, let me tell you a few things you'd actually want to know, if you're thinking of coming here. There's the old town, where we are now, with stone alleys, churches, and no straight lines. And then there's the new town, called Fagina, which is flatter, a bit more modern, and where the train drops you off. They're connected by a tunnel, or that scenic cliff path we took earlier. But since we are now walking back towards the final landmark, let us go through the tunnel this time. In case you did not know, Monterosso is the only Cinque Terre village with a real beach. What I meant is that it has actual sand, and not pebbles, pretending to be sand. And that's a big deal in this part of Italy. If you want to swim and stretch out without bruising your tailbone, this is your spot. For us, the best time to visit is early May to early June, or even late in September. Because you'll still get the sunshine, but fewer people. There's a public car park right at the edge of town, which is honestly a miracle, compared to the other villages, where cars are basically illegal. This part of Monterosso is called Fagina, and it is the newer part of town, also where the beach clubs are, where the train drops you off, and where you'll find more modern hotels. And right at the very end of the beach, like he's been quietly watching the whole coastline fall apart and come back together for the last century, is Il Gigante. The Statua del Gigante was built in 1910, and it was meant to represent Neptune, god of the sea, holding up a massive seashell on his shoulder like it's no big deal. Originally, the statue was part of a villa. Someone had this attached to their house. Have you ever seen anything like this? A literal Roman god, chilling at the edge of a beach town in Italy, like he's waiting for happy hour? And this wraps up episode 1 of our Cinque Terre series. So, 1 town down, and 4 more to go. Next up, we're hopping on the train and heading to Vernazza, which, spoiler alert, might just be my favorite. So if you enjoyed this little adventure, hit that like button, drop a comment, and tell me what is your feeling of Monterosso. And don't forget to subscribe, so you don't miss the next episode. And trust me, Vernazza gets spicy.